will have to work frantically on a mini redistrict for the Harold Wyman as we simply don't have enough physical space for enrollment. If the committee votes for a full redistrict tonight, I urge the committee to ask administration to work on a plan B for the Harold Wyman in tandem with the full redistrict in case a full redistrict is found not feasible for fall. We cannot wait until the very end of the year to make this plan, as it will also impact districting.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hello, I'm Julie Schell. I live on Jones Ave in North Woburn. I have one child in the preschool program at the Reeves, and I have two of my own at the Alta Vista currently, and then I help out with my sister's two older kids, so one at the Alta Vista, one at the high school. In looking at the options that you guys presented, it really stressed me out to see option 2, because that option would put me with 5 children to get to 4 different schools within the school system, and 2 schools starting at the same time. So that one was really stressful. Also, I have been the PTO president at the Alta Vista for the last 6 years. So my youngest, who should be going to the Alta Vista in the fall, has been looking forward to going to the Alta Vista since she was born. And she already has made herself known in the space and has expected to be there. So it would be a really big disappointment for her to go to a different school building. That's really me problem, but it's something to consider, that a lot of these kids have expectations of where they're going to go, and it will affect them. Traffic in North Woburn is definitely a consideration. This morning, leaving the Alta Vista, just to get back to my house, it took me 13 minutes to get from the Alta Vista to the School Street lights. So it's not a small amount of time. It seems like it should be, but it's not. Those are really my main concerns. And that's it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pause for a moment. I've been informed that the live stream is up and running. So for those of you who are watching us online right now, I apologize. There were technical difficulties that prevented us from live streaming. We did have a lengthy recess in the attempt to get it up and running, but ultimately decided to go ahead. The meeting has been recorded, so everything that was missed while the live stream wasn't operating has been recorded, and you can go back and watch that at a later time. But we are in the middle of public comment now. So if there is anyone else who would like to address the committee. All right. Seeing no one, we are no longer in the middle of public comment. Unless, go ahead. Yes.
Hi. Brian Murphy from Valley Road in Woburn and in the Harold Wyman district. I want to thank you for doing so much to synthesize so many complex and difficult problems, and I'm sure the data analysis is never straightforward. But I, as a relatively new family to Woburn, we have one son, our oldest in the Harold Wyman, as a first grader, and 2 others that will follow along in soon. We've found that in moving to Woburn, one thing that is so appealing and wonderful about this community is that it is a very tight community, and the thought of mixing up, and so many of the communities are based around schools and around I think of there's just like the parent-teacher associations that do so much for us, and how we've been able to form connections with others has been really beneficial, and the thought of kind of breaking that up is very jarring, and especially since there's such a strong sense of community. And so I can't speak because I don't see the data, so I can't speak to what would be best. I know it's probably impossible to please everyone, but I would implore you to take the slow approach, to really take the burden of helping the community understand what the problems are and what the possible solutions are. And I know there are deadlines and timelines that are difficult to ignore, but I think that knowing just how tight of a community Woburn is as a whole, but also just in these pockets, I think everyone deserves to feel like they're getting a boost and an upgrade. And yeah, and again, it's hard to make sure that everyone's happy, but I really think that is something that must happen. And I hope that we can take the time that we need to make sure that that everyone that can be on the same page is on the same page. And so, for us, I hope that it's nice if nothing changes, because I think people don't like change. So as little change as possible, but at the very least, we have to be able to understand and feel good about what's happening, even if it means that some things will change for us, that we can understand that how it can be beneficial to us and to other members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee?
Hello, my name is Elaine Donka. I live on Warren Ave, and my 2 children are at the White. And so I've heard a lot of great things said today. People have a lot of opinions and feelings, and okay, a lot of people looking at me. I just want to give the perspective from one of the schools that is a bit overcrowded and does have not a lot of resources. I am the PTO president, new this year at the White, so I'm pretty involved with the community there. But I am also for full redistrict, and that is because, I don't want to leave the White. I love my community. I love the teachers. Big fan of Mr. Nickerson. But I go in there a lot. I'm in the school at least once, twice a month, and we're kind of working with what we got, and they're doing a great job, but I just feel like we just don't have enough resources to serve the kids we have. We have kids with a lot of high needs, whether they be families that don't have economic resources, children who don't speak English. The teachers are just, I think, spread pretty thin right now. So I think that we need to figure something out so that we can have a little bit more equity among all of the schools. And so that is why I am for full redistrict. I know obviously it needs to be done with care. It needs to be done thoughtfully. But I am not in favor of doing nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee? Okay. I am not seeing anyone at this time. Last call? Okay. So, with public comment at an end, I want to first thank everyone who addressed us tonight. We appreciate it. It's not always easy to get up, and especially in front of a larger crowd, and talk about your own family and talk about your own needs. So I appreciate everyone who was able to speak with us tonight. So at this point, we are going to move into a discussion of the options and begin our deliberation and move towards a vote. Mr. Moran.
That's it?
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, it's I made some quick notes here. The word redistricting came up, finally, as someone who's been sitting here for over 20 years. Everybody brought up redistricting. Don't talk about redistricting. Well, it's here. It has to be done. The question is when and who's going to do it. All right? I think a lot of these points through the emails that the chairman's received, which he distributed to all of us, so we as well as members got all of your emails directed to us, and we got a chance to read them and go through them. And listening to some of the speakers tonight and knowing what's going on, with everything, and I don't want to point fingers to the principals, but I know at one of the original resource meetings, a quote was made that, and I hate to say it, we'll make it work somehow. When the time delay of the fact that, we're doing this, we're doing that, if we don't do much of anything, we can make it work. Implementing the time delay, perhaps not redistricting the major portions of everything, again, referring to option one. I think it's something that's needed. I stated it before that redistricting, it's got to happen. Whether it's with a new North Woburn school or new mapping with consultants and circles and graphs and pie charts and everything else. Who's going to go where and when? I'm not sure. But I think I myself tonight, I know how difficult it is, and I appreciate all the work that everyone, principals, administrators, all the people that, working behind the scenes on behalf of our students. I'm really myself personally leaning towards option one, merely because there's a lot of work that has to be done. As recently as last week, the LPAC group came in, and they had organizations from the Boys and Girls Club, organizations from the Creative Care people, and organizations from the YMCA. Again, not so much school education, but this was before and after school options and opportunities for our families. Where will they go? That has to be thrown into the mix. It was brought up a little bit tonight. Traffic, sitting here in front of some of, the Honorable Mayor Concanon and City Council members. Traffic, you guys ever hear that before? Yeah, they're shaking their heads, yes. It's no surprise to anybody that traffic issues across the city. We're not going to solve that by redistricting schools. We may lessen it a little bit at a different couple of schools. We may have to, reroute some of the projections of the traffic getting in and getting out of the school districts. But I think at this point, Mr. Chairman, I myself personally, unless someone can convince me otherwise, I will be leaning towards option one this evening. And again, we recently had the Kindness Day. I know the chairman mentioned it tonight. The emails received, folks, very kind, very thoughtful, very particular as to, some personal stories, as the chairman indicated. We get all that. We know it's personal, to a lot of people. But I've also heard, from people in the past that, when Goodyear students and staff went to the old clap, what's up with that? Well, they got a new school out of it. So you knew it was a short-term kind of exercise. So until we can spend more time, I believe Mr. Pauli said it, time, effort, energy into a year from now, perhaps that school year coming up, redistricting wouldn't be such a bad word at that point. So I just wanted to start off the conversation with that, if I could, Mr. Chairman. So thank you.
Mrs. Chisholm.
Well, I'll just make a motion that we take option two off the plate right now. No one's for it. Most of the emails were against it, and it's just splitting a certain section of the city up, and I just don't think that's fair. I would just like to limit it now to just option one and option three for discussion purposes.
Second.
All right.
On the motion, I think when I first reviewed that proposal, by the way, thank you, administration, for working on that and providing that to us. I thought it was very well thought out. I think when we saw it and we saw the reaction to families, particularly the Linscott community and the Alta Vista community that's very tight-knit, I think it became obvious that it just isn't the best thing to do right now. And I agree that it sets apart the Linscott, make it a different school than the other schools and difficult with alignment and community building. So I agree with Ms. Chisholm's motion. I'll be voting in favor of it.
Thank you. Anything else on that motion? Okay. All those in favor of removing option two from our list to be considered, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. So we will be limiting our discussion and our vote this evening to options one and option 3. I wonder if now might be a good time, if either Dr. Crowley or Ms. Crowley, just a little bit of a rundown, as I heard a couple of public comments tonight about why we are here and what some of the stressors are on our schools that have led us to have to consider these options. Do you might want to give a little bit of a rundown, as I think we have a slightly larger audience tonight than we've had in the past.
Sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dr. Crowley.
So I think you alluded to it earlier. In 2019, NESDEC did a demographic study because we were looking at the building that was happening in Woburn, and then obviously in 2020 things changed, and the student population actually decreased slightly during COVID and the year after. That being said, the student population this year is up 8%, so we've enrolled 335 new kids this year. And we've seen this not only just new students, but new students with different needs. And so over the past couple of years, we've had to move preschool classes from the Shamrock to the Reeves. We've had to move the RISE program, that's expanded, the autism program. It's still at the Shamrock, but it's expanded to the Harold Wyman. We've created a new special ed program, the SOAR program at the Malcolm White. So as the needs of our students have changed, so too has the space issues. And so it's not something that we've been sitting, looking at and wondering what to do. We've been trying to address it in real time annually. Ms. Crowley, no relation, by the way, to you alluded to this as well. So you call it a task force, but we did work with the city. So with Tom Quinn at the city, because really what he was able to do, along with Ms. Young, Mr. Casares, we would sit and kind of forecast when new buildings were going to come online and potentially how many what the yield from those the new buildings would be. And so we've been doing that for the past couple of years as well. And that's been a great partnership with the city, and appreciative of that time and commitment that Mr. Quinn's been able to give us. So, and really what the capacity issue that we're speaking of now, I said it earlier, we've actually enrolled 500 students since the beginning of the school year, but we've lost some, so our yield is 335. And so Woburn is in a constant state of change, I believe. It's not the same Woburn that it was 5 years ago. And so the intent here, I've heard the word equity. We have schools that are more crowded than others, we really do. And so to the parent, Elaine, I believe, from the Malcolm White, you're right, the Malcolm White is crowded. The Goodyear is also very crowded, and the Harold Wyman is crowded this year. And so the Alta Vista, Linscott, and the Reeves have more space, and that's a function of where people have landed to live. And so in thinking about the redistricting option, it's really about providing equity to all of our kids that live in the city of Woburn. I also heard the idea of the middle schools being part of this, and I would venture to say that if this is the plan, that should be an option as well, just to explore. But I don't know if that's helpful to answer your question.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'll just elaborate just a little bit more. That reflected in the resources minutes, I believe that there have been very innovative and I'll use the word heroic efforts to preserve space, particularly in the Malcolm White, the Goodyear, and the Harold Wyman, using spaces that are not designed for instruction. The phrase art on a cart, which is meaning that specialists that are licensed teachers that are conducting curriculum are moving to classrooms versus the kids going into separate spaces. And the loss of the library, the Malcolm White may very well lose its library next year, to use that space for instruction, particularly for ML learners that need ML instruction. So there's a drastic sort of situation going on. And I believe that the Harold Wyman is seeing pockets, I'm looking at the Harold Wyman admin, hi, at the kindergarten and third grade. So we have a serious problem at the table tonight. It's not just something well, I'll make a motion, if I may. I think I'd like to move forward. I'd like the committee to consider moving forward with option 3 for discussion purposes. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the motion.
On the motion, I think that the most striking feature of the current school system as existing and probably next year is the fact that specialists who are, we have created this emphasis on art and music in this district, and we have made these great efforts to support art and music in specials in library and health as well. And now we are simultaneously going to run a school district where these specialists will not have separate spaces. I believe that the children not moving to different classrooms during the day and remaining in their classrooms is going to have an impact on their social, emotional, behavioral health as well. So that is very concerning to me. The impact of students learning in a hallway, impact of students learning potentially on a stage. These are not spaces that were designed for classroom instruction. These were designed for other things. And so it concerns me that we would ask the community to build a beautiful new building and then say, we are not using it the way that it's designed to be. So I do think that we are having a redistrict will actually create a better learning system and a school system that will promote student achievement more than it is doing right now. And talk about equity, we have not drawn lines since, I believe, 1989. We are now 2024. Learners are different. There are sensory rooms. There are rooms designed for the neuropsychology of students in 2024 that we need to take into consideration. I believe that redistricting will be more child-centered. We will be literally making a decision based on the needs of children. I think that our fiduciary obligations, we have an ethical and fiduciary obligation to the taxpayers to use our buildings to the maximization of resources possible. And lastly, if we ever want to go to the MSBA and get some dough, if we want to go to the MSBA and apply for funding, speak more professionally, then we do need to have updated redistrict lines that we can say we have done everything possible. Now we need public funding. So I have thought about this very carefully for multiple years, and I do think it's time to re-envision public schools based on what the needs of students are right now.
Further on the motion, Ms. Cormier and then Ms. West.
Thank you. First, I so much appreciate Ms. Crowley and all the work she's done through resources and probably basically all her own free time on this, and her very thoughtful comments on specific students, the students broadly, and it has been a very difficult, and I've gone back and forth on a number of things, and based on a lot of the emails we've received, even public comments tonight, I've been plugging it into sort of a kind of plan for myself and how I want to go, and it's difficult. I appreciate the idea of option 3. I have leaned tonight more towards option 1 for a few reasons, being before and after school programming and the ability of parents in the next 6 months to be moved from where they have, and I know it's not the, you know, there have been efforts to have before and after school programming in many of our schools. It's just the staffing just isn't there. You can hardly staff the lunch and school monitors, so understanding that school before and after school is, you know, a step down from that, and people do need it, and I understand as well the, you know, busing from the Boys and Girls Club to the Boys and Girls Club from various schools. It's not the same throughout the city, and there are various reasons for that. I agree with the idea that this is, while I don't think that anybody necessarily waited too long to do this. I think the time we have left to do it is short. And so having the concern of having everything in place by the end of school so that people can plan accordingly, get their kids ready for this. I know, you know, kids, they always say kids are resilient. I do agree with that. I think part of it is everybody being on the same page, which I know is difficult, but that is the compromise we have to come to get kids in appropriately sized classrooms and specific classrooms for things that they're supposed to be used for. You know, to me, it's short notice, and I don't know that there's any specific amount of time that would be appropriate for everybody. I just think with the 3 months that was quoted for this, I don't know that, and barring any other issues, which you know there always could be in anything you do, that's just a concern for me. I'm also not sure when an MSBA application would be due, and that's sort of I wasn't sure where that would fit into I know it is completely appropriate and necessary to do this for the MSBA application. I just wasn't sure if that was something we were expecting to do this coming year, or if we were to have a plan throughout the next school year, planning for the next one, if that would be able to be included. I wasn't sure. I understand there are concerns about the fiscal responsibilities, and I understand that. I just don't know. It does feel like I know we have to move quickly. It just seems like we're moving quicker than maybe people would be able to manage. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
If I could just ask Dr. Crowley for a quick clarification. The term 3 months has been mentioned a couple times, and I just wanted to see if you would be willing to give a little bit of an update on conversations you've had with prospective consultants.
Yeah, I've talked to a few consultants, and I asked about potential timelines, and one of the consultants indicated that once we engage, it could be done within 3 months from the point of engagement. So that's where that 3 month came from.
Okay. So one consultant gave you that as a we could do it fully complete in 3 months.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily an indication of where all the benchmarks are there.
Yeah, and then another consultant, again, to Ms. Cormier's point, I also agreed with the 3 month timeline, but things would have to happen seamlessly was the feedback there, but it can.
Okay. Ms. Watson.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone here tonight, everyone listening in, and all the emails we've received, the public comment today. It's really been helpful in this difficult decision that we have ahead of us, so thank you. There's a lot to consider, and my brain has been like this, just thinking about everything, as I'm sure many people feel the same way. But I do think we have a difficult situation in front of us. We have a capacity issue where we have space in our schools. Our schools have the ability to hold the number of students we have in them. We just aren't utilizing the space as it was intended to be used, where we have the three, the Goodyear, the Malcolm White, and the Harold Wyman with too many students, and then we have the Linscott and the Alta Vista with smaller classrooms and less students, and that's just the way the lines were drawn back in 1989. And as Ms. Carley mentioned, education has changed. Woburn as a city has changed, and it's going to continue to change. We've seen an 8% increase in our student population this year alone. The kindergarten class is very large. The pre-K has over 188 students in it, so we can expect those kindergarten classes to be larger. The first grade is the largest classroom size we have in this district at over 370 and change, if I remember correctly. So those students are going to be with us for a long time. So those are some big numbers that we need to think about as we're thinking about what we want to do for our city, and what's important, what's good for our kids, what's good for our families. What does that look like? And if I think back when I was in school and I think I go to art class, I go to the art room. I learn in the art room. I go to the music class. I can be loud in the music class because that room was intended to be used that way. Not somebody pushing a cart to go to a classroom and teach the class in a space that might be wasn't intended to be used that way. Learning happens in these art rooms. Learning happens in these music rooms. If you don't have the kids in those spaces, a different kind of learning happens. It's not the same. And a kid needs to get up. A kid needs to move. Adults need to move. We need to stand up. We take walking meetings. We do things like that. And we need to do that as an adults who can regulate our emotions a little bit better than the tiny humans. We need to remember that those small people need that same thing. And to sit in a classroom, it's hard. And we are very fortunate. We have a very diverse group of teachers. We have a very diverse student population. And some of those students need separate classrooms that are smaller, 4 to 5 kids in a classroom. We need space for that. And it's great that we can keep those kids at home in their backyard. As we know, kids taught in district really can thrive because they're part of a community that's close to home, and they can go to the school with their neighbor across the street. Some of those programs also require different assessment centers that also require space. So we need to keep all of that in mind as we're thinking about this. And our special education is around 1,000 students. It's like over 24%. So that's also something to note, I think. And coming into this, thinking about all these different options, I really would have to say I'm in favor of a complete redistrict. I just think it's what's best for the district. And I understand the time. I respect that. And I think it's very important that as we think about option 3, how we're going to execute it, that we can do it in a timeline that can make sense for this coming school year, where we can get everybody's and buy-in, if as much as we can anyway. And the students need to be aware of it, the staff need to be aware of it, and how can we support them, whether that's like a social, emotionally, like what can we do as a district to make sure that people feel comfortable going into a new school if they're part of the redistrict. I do think that's very important. But I think just the way the lines are drawn right now, and it doesn't really make sense. It's certainly not equitable to have a classroom size of 16 and a classroom size of 23. And I think the only way to get past that is to do a complete redistrict of our elementary schools with the potential of a middle school. I think something to keep in mind as well when we do that redistrict would be some of our elementary schools are split into what middle school they go in. It would be very nice if we can keep those kids together versus some going to the Joyce and some going to the Kennedy. I think that's difficult for students. So I hear everybody and what they're saying, but I do really have to think about what our kids really need. And we have a great team. I believe we can pull it off. I do. And that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Chisholm.
I'm in favor of the full redistricting because I just think that we're only pushing the can down the corridors of the schools. It's not going to help anything. We are in a crisis situation for space now. By waiting a year, it's not going to make it better. It's only going to make it worse. I mean, to even think about, art on a card, as we want to call it, is not only not unfair to the kids, it's not fair to the staff. They have their rooms. That's the time when the kids do go to art or they do go to music. A teacher might be able to maybe grab a glass of water or go to the bathroom or do something equally exciting. So I think I think by taking that away and their classroom is being used, even though as another teacher would come in, they could leave the classroom, it's still their classroom. They don't have the chance to look around to see if maybe, Susie had finished her spelling test and maybe Johnny didn't finish the spelling test. So this is stuff that I think that we need to be, cognizant of all of these things as we're moving forward. Change is very, very difficult, but the kids adapt as much as parents. We support them. Truly, I mean, this is the reason I got on school committee, because I lived through a redistricting and it was kind of a nightmare for us, but it did it. It happened, and it can happen. And we do have to move on this now. We can't wait any longer. If we delay any vote, it has to happen so that we have the 3 months before the end of school to allow kids maybe even over the summer, if we could open schools up so that they could visit their new school or something. But food for thought down the road a little bit. But we do have to move forward with this, not only for this, but we have a budget meeting. We have no way we can do an 18.6% budget not knowing if this is going to happen. And if we don't do something as a total redistricting, we're not going to be able to reduce that budget to where we can think would be feasible, not only for us, but for the other departments in the city, for everybody else, the citizens, the taxpayers. It would not be fair to do this. We would not be able to open school unless we had like an 18% budget to run the schools that we have now. We're going to need additional staff. We have the Harold Wyman that has class sizes coming in. There's no classrooms to put those kids. I mean, we lived through kids being taught on an auditorium, on a stage. It was awful, and it should never be repeated. And I know that right now we have kids being learned behind screens, which is not fair to them. It's not fair to the teacher. It's not fair to the building. Kids coming out in the hallway, getting their backpacks, and there's somebody at the end of the hallway taking a test. That should not happen. So we need to take drastic steps, and it's going to be hard. It really will be hard, but we'll work together, and we'll listen to parents, and we'll try to help as many as we can, and we'll go from there. But I do think we need to take some action, and when 3 out of our 7 schools are overcrowded, we need to take action. I mean, I just think that's, we can delay it if we want, but it's going to be a nightmare next year. I mean, I wish we had more time, but we don't. So that's my only 2 cents for now, but I'll give a nickel later.
Just want to make sure.
James, do you have?
Yes
Mr.
and
Russell,
no.
go
So, yeah, I don't mind speaking. I spoke to my son the other day, and I said, I recall when I was growing up, we had large classrooms. I grew up in a city where very overpopulated, and I remember staying in the classroom for the entire day. We had music in that classroom, art. We had lunch in that classroom. We had gym in that classroom. No, I'm joking. We didn't have gym in the classroom, but everything was wrapped around that classroom. One thing I can say is what was good for me may not be good for other people or my children in that sense. I'm leaning more towards a redistrict based off of just what I'm hearing, that the classroom that's upcoming is large. And if nothing is done, then the problem will get worse. If we acknowledge a problem and nothing is done, then we'll foresee a future problem. Change is hard. My pushback has always been, let's take it slow and be mindful. I think we have, and something that Ms. Comier say, we have, and we still are, and I believe that we will continue to be mindful and continue to listen and be gentle and compassionate to those. And I think being on the same page with our children, I was resilient. I went to several elementary schools, which was really difficult. And I do have a child in the 4th grade at the Harold Wyman, so it's not only affecting others, but it's also affecting my family too. So my child is going to have to deal with, she's not going to be in the 5th grade. She may not. I'm not sure. So this is a hard decision, but I think, again, doing nothing may not be the wisest decision considering what the future may hold. So that's my 2 cents.
Ms. Crowley, and then we'll go back.
There's actually not an option to do nothing because there has to be a plan B. So it's my understanding that this vote is to give the administration authority to act on our behalf to look at a redistricting option, which they will bring the options. Maybe I shouldn't use that word. It says plans, potential plans, would they bring back to us. But if those don't work out, we have to have plan B. There has to be a tandem thing going on because the Harold Wyman does not have enough classroom space. So there will be, in fact, another option anyways. So I guess I don't understand what the hesitancy is to allowing admin to at least consult with someone to look into it. Like, I guess I don't understand what the hesitation is around that. Maybe someone could explain.
Thank you. Ms. Cormier.
I actually, very similar comment. I just wanted to be clear that I'm not in favor of doing nothing, although we were
Right.
calling option 1 nothing.
Right.
And this has been sort of a back and forth, sort of people are not understanding, maybe we don't understand, that what the vote specifically tonight is for, and that I'm glad that you pointed that out, that it's for the administration to move forward with looking into. And, I guess my point, and while I will, of course, respect anything that the committee puts forward, I think I am just saying that I am leaning towards, ideally something, innovative ways to get through this 1 year, knowing, and I know that's still going to put a lot of work on people, whether you soft redistrict the incoming kindergartners, if you choice out, like we've discussed in how those are subsets of option 1, with the intention of potentially the next year. And so I didn't want it to sound like I'm just want to do nothing and let the Harold Wyman and everybody else just kind of have kids hang out the windows. This is not, and so I do appreciate that this vote would move forward more action and direct the administration. I just wanted to be clear that my thoughts was to just move, but a little slower than a full redistrict. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moran, go ahead.
What she said, again, for years we talked, no one wanted to talk about redistricting. Here we are talking about it. And again, to Ms. Cormier's point as well, I'm not saying do nothing. I think, knowing the administrators and the staff that we have and the teams that we have, and again, we are just kicking the can down the road. But again, this is for our families to decide, or our admin to decide what's going to happen. Delay it a year. Again, to Ms. Crowley's point, work on some plan. I'm not saying, is it a full redistrict? Is it a couple? What can we do? Again, the idea of a consultant, Is it gonna be 3 months, gonna be 4 months? Software, that's gonna cost money. Everything's gonna cost money and time. So I think kind of set back a little bit, set it up so that we can put our efforts towards, I guess I call it a soft redistrict to your point, Ms. Crowley. It's still gonna be needed, is necessary, but again, perhaps, make arrangements for a few families that, we already, if you live here, you could be going there in the redistrict. It's that simple. But if you live across the street from the Alta Vista, again, to your point, Ms. Crowley, I think, Plan 1 is not doing nothing. It's doing what we're doing with an aspect and an idea of working within the districts to correct, the overcrowding in a couple of school districts. And again, it's tough, but, I think if you told these principals, make it happen, make it work, that's what you got to do, and they'll be right at it tomorrow morning as soon as they get to work, and arranging what they have to do to continue what they've been doing as best they can do. So again, I'm not saying do nothing, but I am saying try to lean towards option 1 for this evening. That's, again, not doing nothing, but allow the redistricting discussion to continue in some way, shape, or form. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Young, did you have something you wanted to
Yeah,
mention?
just as a clarification, and I saw you look at me when you said it originally, because I've said it a few times. I think that the key is just to know that option 1 does mean that there are students who will be redistricted. It will just be really having to be a plan for just one single building, in which there are students who currently would be going to one building who would now be having to go to another building. And I think that's why, for the clarification, is that there will have to be something done, no matter what, at least just one school. And so I just, for clarification to it, is that regardless, we're going to have to be, I guess, provided direction on that one.
Right. So it's fair to say, and you mentioned specific student populations who may need to be redistricted.
Mm-hmm.
At one school, there are also mitigation factors that we will need to either introduce or enhance at other schools.
Yes.
So there will be further disruptions no matter the option that we choose here.
Yes.
And things that we will need to continue to track and put into operation,
Yes.
again, no matter the option we choose.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Wetzel, did you have your hand up earlier?
I did, thank you, but it was very similar to what Ms. Crowley said. But if I could
Sure.
off topic very quickly, I
And then we'll
promised
come to
Ms.
Ms.
Cotton. I promised Ms. Cotton, she's the president of the CPAC, I'd give a shout out tomorrow. They have the College in Transition Fair, which hasn't been held in person since COVID, so that'll be at the high school at 6:30. And they're going to have different colleges there, as well as kids that are transitioning out of high school, maybe not attending college, but what other services are out there for them. So anyone that's interested, you can look on the CPAC's social pages to find more information. And I printed out some flyers that were at the front table there where you got your agendas for anyone that's here today. Thanks.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Mrs. Chisholm.
I do want to commend Mr. Mulrine. I think it's great that you think our staff is wonderful, and they are, and they do outstanding things. Our administration team is awesome. But I'm not so sure they can build classrooms by September. But I hope you get a good start. Get your shovels out there tomorrow, because we're going to need classrooms. We're not going to be able to just fix the problem by not doing a redistricting. And we will affect kids, because now if we move those classrooms out of the Harold Wyman that we moved into this year, those same students are going to have their third move. And that's not fair to those students. It's not fair to anybody, but we have to make a plan that works. And not just for September, but hopefully for at least, well, maybe not 30 years, but at least for 20 years or 10 years, that we make it worthwhile. And it's hard because we can't have streets where only second graders live, even though we'd like to do that so we could make it easier in the classrooms, but it doesn't work that way. And we have to be fair to these schools. And, if we allow this administration to say, okay, you're going to do selective, redistricting, or tell people, where they're going to go to school. I really beg to differ if somebody comes and buys a house for $1.3 million on Carlson Drive or Darling Way, and then you say to them, by the way, you're not going to that brand new building down the street. You're going to go over to the west side, or you're going to go up to North Woburn. Not going to fly. We're going to hear a lot more from people, and I would be one of those if I was in that situation. So I don't think that it's fair that we're going to just pick on a school. We need to fix the system. And we're not going to do it by just picking on and sitting here and saying, okay, we're gonna have administration start tomorrow looking for spaces, and taking away a library at a school is not something we should support at this table. We fought hard and long for these new schools, and this should not be taking place in Woburn. So I just think that we need to think about this, and again, I hate to keep beating this drum. We have a budget we have to pass. We have to know what we're gonna need to open school. And if we don't redistrict and save some money by doing that, hopefully we will. I mean, busing has to come into play. We're not gonna be able to open our schools unless we have like a 17 or 16% budget, and I don't think that's gonna fly. Just kinda out there a little bit. But just for your edification, we need to make a decision, and it's gonna be hard, and people are gonna be mad, and some people will be disappointed, but this is what we were elected to do. So, I mean, take the stand and make it right for all of our students.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can go now, and then we'll come back to this one.
No, I think that there's this, the whole elementary school system, to me, relies on this preparation time for elementary school teachers and this place where kids can move around the school and have different experiences in different rooms. And our school system is not operating that way. Mm-hmm. It's operating in a model of scarcity, of let's find where to have this meeting, and we're going to put children here for instruction, and it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like the best way to educate children. And on the other hand, if we take option one, which I can understand, certainly very valid reasons to do that, but we're disrupting learners, and we're maintaining the same disruptive school system. Mm-hmm. And the specialists, these teachers are highly talented, and now we're taking away their spaces, making them prep and bring things up like an elevator to like a 5th grade classroom, and I just feel like it's not the right way to, and we have an option, we have a way to allow the superintendent to explore something else and bring it to us. If it's catastrophic, then we simply say no, nuh-uh. Plan B. If it's like, we're gonna reroute children to Jupiter, we just don't like it, we just can't stomach it, then we just decline, put it on hold. But we have to at least look into it, authorize the superintendent and the team to find the solution. Because this, it's always going to be the most vulnerable kids, the kids that are underrepresented, marginalized. It's always going to be these children in our schools that are always going to be the most impacted, always. And so I just think a full redistrict will diversify the schools, really, really echo sentiments of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and start from scratch, basically. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Watson?
Yeah, well, that's a big one to follow. The library, that one, right now, the Malcolm White Library is being used as a library, but it's also being used to hold meetings, special education team meetings oftentimes, which can have sensitive information associated with them, which shouldn't be shared with the public, which can be because it's in a public space inside of a school. But then to remove that library entirely and make it classrooms, now I don't know where those team meetings are happening, and I don't know where those kids are checking out books every other week when they go to the library to bring home, and some kids don't get to our public library, so then they have no library at all to go to. That's devastating. And I don't know what happens if we have an 8% increase again in student population, if the Goodyear and the Malcolm White, which are on the verge of being too full right now, are even more full, and the Harold-Wyman's already at capacity for kindergarten and oncoming kindergarten and 3rd grade. I'm not sure what happens to those kids. Where do they go? At that point, would we be looking at a redistrict of all the new students? I don't know. So I agree with Ms. Crawley, what she said. We're giving administration an opportunity, we're telling them, hey, we want to consider this option because this is what we feel the students, the staff, and the families inside the community need. Please go forth and look at that option. Use the software. Get a consultant, which is amazing, a highly trained consultant that I was talking to Dr. Crawley about this. This is what that person's job is. They do this for a living. They know what they're doing. We can get someone like that to come in and help us make this plan work, make it work for our city. And I just, that's where I have to go. I have to go. I can't support a library. I can't support not having music rooms. I can't support sending kids out of district because we can't support them inside of our district because we don't have space. That is not a reason to send a kid on an IEP away. Absolutely not. So my vote will remain with option 3.
Anyone else want to speak on this motion? Mr. Moran.
Just a quick closing comment, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Just, obviously we have representatives here from the WTA, and hopefully, whatever happens tonight, the administration will be, working in conjunction with the WTA for whatever choices are made. And in the terms, of disruption, a lot of the staff and students have gone through COVID. We all remember those days. And have also gone through a teacher's strike. A couple of options that, could have been devastating to folks. I don't know, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it was, issues that came up throughout their, time in school. And again, I'm not saying not to, redistrict. I'm not really in favor of redistricting everybody immediately. That's my closing point tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs.
Just-
Chisholm.
Do we have a time frame on how we would get an initial redistricting kind of schedule? Because again, if we say, okay, we're going to go with this, hire the consultant and do it, and he comes back to us in June and we say we can't do it, and we've already sent down a budget taking into effect we will, what do we do then? We just can't go on assumptions. We have to make a decision and go for it.
Well, if the committee votes to authorize us to engage, we will do that and report our findings to you next week to give you whatever, in real time. We'll provide updates. And to Ms. Crowley's point, if it's something that, like the consultant or whomever says it just is not possible, we'll tell you.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Is there anything further?
I'll say something. As a dad of 5, and one of my 5 children has an IEP, and one of the most challenging things is when something is happening to your children. I've heard that some children are learning, I guess, in hallways and on stages. That's not happening to my child. So the effect is not the same. And so one thing that I'm doing as a dad is I'm trying to step into that other parent's shoes and think, okay, how would I feel if my daughter or my son is coming home and giving me their experience for the day? They're in a hallway, multiple distractions. So I'm considering that. And then just considering the larger classes. Again, when it's not happening to you, it doesn't affect you, it doesn't feel the same. But when it is happening to you, those are the time where it's like, okay, this is serious. Like any huge movement usually happens because it happened directly to that individual or to that family. So I'm just saying to those on the committee and those in the audience, is consider those parents that are facing the challenges of their child that's maybe learning in a different way that maybe it's not appropriate for other kids or it's not equitable. So just to consider that as we move forward.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Before I call for a vote, I do want to just mention to the public, I think you've heard the committee struggle with this. I know that you've all struggled with this. We are going to come to a decision tonight on how to direct administration to expend resources. Know that it's not an easy decision. There are no right answers here. As Mr. Austin shared personally, I will also share personally, my daughter is almost certainly going to be redistricted if there is a redistricting, or she will lose her library. That is a choice that I now face. Right? We are all invested in this school system in some way. We are all affected by the decisions that this body is about to make in some way. So I ask, you may well be upset with the decision we make here tonight. I ask that you remember, I think, Mr. Austin's words, and try to put yourselves in the shoes of the parents who may see disruption, who may see the disruption in their current lives, or who may see disruption if we redistrict. Right? This is not going to be an easy decision, and it is not going to be an easy thing for families to deal with. So with that having been said, I think we should have a roll call vote on this one.
Make a motion, we accept option 1 with the capability of.
We are actually already on the motion.
We already
We
have
have been on the motion.
Yeah,
So
there's a motion and second.
we are going to call for a roll call vote. Dr. Crowley.
Does he need
So
to
this
repeat
is, so
what
just
my
just to
motion
repeat
is?
the motion, a yes on this motion would accept option 3. as the full redistrict option as where we are directing administration to exert resources. A no vote would return us to debate. Dr. Crowley.
Mr. Austin,
Yes.
Ms. Chisholm,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
No.
Ms. Crowley,
Yes.
Mr. Morenon,
No,
Ms. Wetzel,
Yes.
Mr. Lipson.
Yes. All right. That makes the vote 5-2 in favor of directing administration to investigate redistricting and to report back to the committee their findings. We will take whatever findings we are given and begin to discuss feasibility of those findings and a potential path forward from there. Ms. Crowley.
I want to make a motion, I probably won't say this right. I want to make a motion that we direct administration to keep us apprised of Plan B in case the full redistrict option is not accepted. So specifically what pocket redistricting would look like for our learners.
Okay.
I think how we've discussed that looks like is providing you with the options that you could take for a Plan B.
Yes. Thank you.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Yes, second.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
Oh.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
On those motions, if we could get, I know that Mr. Dizio had given us some money, and if we did a full redistricting, what we would save on our budget. So we need to know, if we didn't go with that, what Plan B would cost.
Okay. So we will look at so we're directing administration with this motion as well to give us a cost-benefit analysis along with an operation.
Exactly. Thank you.
All right. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That motion carries. If there is nothing further,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you, Mrs. Chisholm. Do I have a second?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your comments.
we're back tomorrow night for another show.
Yep, come on back. We'll be here.
Over under at like